The trading post on Kepler 442b hummed with the usual collection of galactic species going about their business. Tall, graceful Altarians negotiated shipping contracts with stocky draconian merchants, while insectoid Zephyrite clicked and buzzed over mineral samples. The air recyclers worked overtime to accommodate the various atmospheric requirements, creating a slightly metallic taste that most spacers had grown accustomed to. Staff Sergeant Marcus Tank Rodriguez of the United States Marine Corps sat alone at a corner table, nursing what the Altarians generously called ethanol beverage, but tasted more like diluted engine coolant. His dress blue uniform drew curious glances from the aliens around him. Humans were still relatively new to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago, and their military representatives were even rarer sights. Tank wasn't supposed to be here. His transport to the diplomatic summit on Proxima Station had suffered engine failure 3 days ago, stranding him on this backwater trading post while waiting for repairs. The irony wasn't lost on him that Earth's newest Marine, fresh from completing advanced xenobiology training, was stuck playing tourist on an alien world. The peaceful atmosphere shattered when the Corvan raiding ship dropped out of hyperspace directly above the trading post. Alarms wailed as the massive vessel, bristling with weapons and painted in the traditional blood red of the Corvan Empire, cast its shadow over the settlement. The locals knew that sound meant only one thing: tribute time. Panic spread through the trading post like wildfire. Merchants frantically secured their most valuable goods while families herded their young into reinforced shelters. The Corvans had been the galaxy's apex predators for over 3 millennia. Standing 8 feet tall with natural armor plating and razor-sharp claws, they had built their empire on the simple principle that might makes right. Every species in known space had learned to submit or perish. Tank watched through the transparent aluminum windows as sleek drop pods launched from the Corvan ship. Each pod contained a squad of the fearsome warriors, and there had to be at least 20 pods screaming toward the surface. Standard Corvan intimidation tactics, overwhelming force designed to crush any thoughts of resistance before they could form. The trading post's automated defense systems tried to engage the incoming pods, but the energy shield surrounding each drop craft absorbed the pitiful laser fire without even flickering. Within minutes, the first pods crashed into the settlement's main plaza, their occupants emerging with the casual confidence of apex predators entering a petting zoo. War Master Crax stepped from the lead pod, his obsidian armor reflecting the harsh light of Kepler 442b's twin suns. Battle scars crisscrossed his hide, each one a trophy from some conquered world. His yellow eyes surveyed the cowering aliens with the same interest a human might show when examining insects. Behind him, 19 more Corvan warriors took positions, their plasma rifles charged and ready. Citizens of this pathetic outpost, Crax's voice boomed through his armor's amplification system, the universal translator rendering his growls into each species' native language. The Corvan Empire honors you with our presence. As is traditional, you will provide tribute of 50% of all goods and currency, plus 20 individuals to serve as labor units. Compliance will result in your continued existence. Resistance will result in artistic rearrangement of your molecular structure. The alien population huddled together, whimpering and clicking in their various languages. This was how it always went. The Corvans would take what they wanted, and everyone else would be grateful to survive the encounter. It was the natural order of things, as immutable as gravity or thermodynamics. Tank finished his drink and stood up slowly. The movement drew Crax's attention, those predatory yellow eyes focusing on the lone human in his strange blue uniform. The War Master's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Ah, one of the new species, Crax rumbled, switching to the simplified galactic standard that most humans understood. I have heard of your kind. Soft-skinned mammals from a backwater world called Earth. You have only recently learned to crawl between the stars like proper sentience. The Marine stepped forward, his combat boots clicking against the trading post's metal flooring. At 6 feet tall, he was dwarfed by the massive Corvan, but his posture remained perfectly straight. Military bearing was something that transcended species boundaries. That's right, Tank replied calmly, his hands clasped behind his back in the at ease position. Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez, United States Marine Corps. And you are? Several aliens gasped at the human's casual tone. Speaking to a Corvan War Master without permission was typically punishable by immediate disintegration. Crax's head tilted slightly, confused by the lack of fear in the human scent. His enhanced olfactory systems detected no stress pheromones, no spike in adrenaline that marked prey in the presence of a predator. "I am War Master Krax of the Crimson Claw Legion," the alien replied, his voice carrying a note of puzzled irritation. "You will join the other tribute units, human. Your species' reputation for endurance makes you valuable as laborers." Tank's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered behind his dark eyes. "I'm afraid that won't be possible, War Master. I took an oath to protect innocent civilians from enemies foreign and domestic. I'm thinking you qualify as both." The trading post fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Even the Corvins seemed stunned by the humans' response. In 3,000 years of galactic domination, no one had ever simply refused a Corvin demand. It was like watching someone argue with a hurricane. Krax's mandibles spread wide in what his species considered a smile, revealing rows of serrated teeth designed for tearing through armor plating. "You amuse me, little mammal. Perhaps I will keep you as a pet instead of processing you for labor. Would you prefer a cage or a leash?" That's when Marcus Rodriguez, Staff Sergeant, United States Marine Corps, got angry. The change in the human was subtle at first, but every predator species in the trading post felt it immediately. Tank's shoulders squared, his breathing deepened, and something ancient and primal stirred behind his eyes. The casual confidence he'd displayed moments before transformed into something far more dangerous. "You know what?" Tank said, his voice dropping to a conversational tone that somehow carried more menace than Krax's amplified roars. "I was having a perfectly good evening. Terrible drink, boring conversation, but peaceful. Then you and your friends decided to drop in uninvited and start making threats." Krax's yellow eyes narrowed. His enhanced senses were picking up chemical changes in the human scent profile, but they made no sense. Instead of fear markers, the readings indicated rising aggression levels that his databanks had no reference for. Humans were supposed to be a peaceful species, traders and diplomats who avoided conflict. "Human," Krax growled, "you seem to misunderstand your position. You are prey. I am predator. This is natural law." Tank took a step forward, completely ignoring the 19 plasma rifles now trained on him. His movement was controlled, deliberate, like a man walking to catch a bus rather than someone facing the galaxy's most feared warriors. "See, that's where you're wrong, big guy," the Marine replied. "I'm not prey. I'm a United States Marine, and Marines don't surrender to alien bullies who pick on civilians. We tend to take that personally." The other Corvin warriors shifted nervously. Their leader's confusion was bleeding through the neural link they shared, creating uncertainty in the ranks. This wasn't how encounters with inferior species were supposed to proceed. The small mammal should be cowering or fleeing, not advancing with the steady gait of an apex predator. Krax raised his plasma rifle, the weapon's targeting system painting a red dot on Tank's chest. "Final warning, human. Submit or be destroyed." Tank glanced down at the targeting laser, then back up at the 8-foot alien warrior. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You want to know the difference between you and me, War Master? You're used to scaring people who can't fight back. I'm used to fighting people who scare everyone else." The Marine's right hand moved with practiced precision, drawing the M1911 pistol holstered at his side. The weapon was an antique by human standards, a chemical projectile firearm that used controlled explosions to launch metal slugs. To the Corvins, who relied on energy weapons, it looked like a primitive relic. "Projectile weapon," one of Krax's subordinates reported through their comm system. "Chemical propellant metal projectiles, negligible threat to armor plating." Krax's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Your primitive firearms cannot penetrate Corvin battle armor, human. Surrender now and I may grant you a quick death." Tank's thumb flicked the safety off with an audible click that somehow seemed unnaturally loud in the suddenly quiet trading post. "You know what they say about assumptions, War Master. They make an ass out of you and me. Though mostly you. The first shot came without warning." Tank's draw was smooth and practiced, the result of thousands of hours of training, and his aim was surgical. The .45 caliber round struck Krax directly between his yellow eyes, the hardened lead slug punching through the supposedly impenetrable faceplate of his armor, like it was tissue paper. The War Master staggered backward, green blood spurting from the neat hole in his skull. His neural implant sparked and died, the smell of burning ozone filling the air. For a moment, he remained upright, his alien brain struggling to process what had happened. Then his massive form toppled backward like a felled tree, armor clanging against the metal floor. The other Corvins stood frozen in shock. Their invincible leader, the warrior who had conquered 17 star systems, lay dead at the feet of a creature they'd dismissed as harmless prey. The small human's primitive weapon had done what energy shields and plasma cannons had never managed to accomplish. Tank stepped over Krax's body and faced the remaining warriors. His pistol remained steady in his hand, while his other arm gestured casually at the aliens cowering behind overturned tables. "Here's how this works," he announced, his voice carrying clearly through the trading post's recycled air. "You have exactly 10 seconds to get back in your flying garbage cans and leave this system. Anyone still planetside after that gets to find out what Marines do to alien invaders." The surviving Corvins looked at each other uncertainly. Their entire worldview had just been shattered by a single gunshot. The human's weapon couldn't have penetrated their armor. Their computers said it was impossible. Yet their leader's corpse said otherwise. Second Commander Vex, now the ranking officer, stepped forward. His rifle trembled slightly in his clawed hands. You cannot defeat all of us, human. We are Corvin warriors." Tank's expression didn't change, but he tilted his head slightly like someone listening to a faint sound. "You hear that? That's the sound of your buddies upstairs trying to figure out why their War Master's life signs just flatlined. Bet they're real curious about what happened down here." More Corvin drop pods were indeed launching from the orbiting ship, their heat signatures visible on every scanner in the trading post. Reinforcements were coming, drawn by the death of their commander. Standard Corvin protocol dictated overwhelming retaliation for any act of defiance. The aliens huddled. In the trading post watched in fascination and terror as the lone human calmly ejected the spent magazine from his weapon and slapped in a fresh one. His movements were economical, practiced, like someone performing a routine task rather than preparing for a desperate last stand. 7 seconds, Tank announced, never taking his eyes off the Corvin warriors. Though honestly, you might want to make it 5. I'm starting to get really annoyed, and trust me, you don't want to see what happens when a Marine gets properly pissed off. The remaining Corvins made their choice. Second Commander Vex barked orders in their native tongue, and the warriors began backing toward their drop pods. Their retreat wasn't dignified, but it was smart. Whatever this human was, he clearly wasn't following the established rules of galactic warfare. Tank watched them go with the same casual interest he might show a group of tourists boarding a shuttle. His weapon remained ready, but he made no move to pursue the withdrawing aliens. Professional courtesy, he supposed. They were making the intelligent choice. The trading post's inhabitants began emerging from their hiding places, staring in amazement at the lone human who had faced down an entire Corvin raiding party. Whispered conversations in a dozen languages filled the air as they tried to process what they'd witnessed. An elderly Altarian merchant named Kelvin approached cautiously, his elongated fingers trembling as he gestured toward Krax's corpse. "Human warrior, what you have done. The Corvins will return with their entire fleet. They will not allow this insult to stand." Tank holstered his sidearm and shrugged. "Probably. But that's a problem for later. Right now we need to prepare for the next wave coming down from their ship." As if summoned by his words, the trading post's proximity alarms began wailing again. Dozens of new contacts were separating from the Corvin vessel, their engine signatures indicating heavy assault pods, rather than the standard drops they'd seen before. The ship's commander was clearly taking no chances with whatever had killed his ground forces leader. "How many warriors can you defeat, human?" asked a young Zephyrite, her compound eyes reflecting the emergency lighting and fractal patterns. Tank walked over to Krax's body and began examining the dead warrior's equipment. The plasma rifle was obviously too large for human hands, but the sidearm looked manageable. He also noted several grenades attached to the armor's utility belt. "Wrong question," he replied, appropriating the alien weapons with practiced efficiency. "You should be asking how long I can keep them busy while you folks evacuate to somewhere safe." The aliens exchanged glances. The concept of one individual sacrificing himself to protect strangers from another species was foreign to most galactic cultures. Self-preservation was a universal constant, wasn't it? Dr. Yix, a draconian scientist who'd been cataloging mineral samples when the raid began, stepped forward. "There is nowhere to run, Marine Rodriguez. This trading post has limited defensive capabilities and no escape vessels large enough for full evacuation." Tank's hands moved with mechanical precision as he checked the alien weapons, his training automatically adapting to their unfamiliar controls. Then we make our stand here. Can you folks handle basic defensive preparations? The question hung in the air like smoke from a chemical fire. Most of the species represented in the trading post were peaceful by nature, traders and explorers who relied on diplomacy rather than violence. They had security forces, but those were typically equipped to handle pirates and smugglers, not full Corvan military assaults. Kelvin wrung his hands nervously. We have some defensive emplacements, but they are designed to repel boarding actions, not ground assaults. The Corvans have heavy weapons, armor, superior numbers. Numbers don't mean everything, Tank interrupted, moving toward the trading post's security station. Sometimes one motivated defender is worth 10 attackers, especially when the attackers are used to easy victories. The Marine's fingers danced across the unfamiliar control interfaces, his enhanced tactical training allowing him to quickly grasp the trading post's defensive systems. Energy barriers, automated turrets, emergency blast doors, not military grade, but workable for someone who understood how to use them properly. Outside, the first of the heavy assault pods slammed into the settlement's perimeter. These weren't the elegant drops the first wave had used. They were designed to punch through fortified positions and deliver their occupants directly into combat zones. Steam hissed from their cooling vents as armored hatches cycled open. Captain Thrak emerged from the lead pod, his armor bearing the crimson stripes of a veteran shock trooper. Unlike the standard Corvan warriors, his unit was equipped with siege weapons and powered exoskeletons that doubled their already impressive physical capabilities. Behind him, 40 of the Empire's finest soldiers took defensive positions. Attention, primitive mammals. Thrak's voice boomed through external speakers as his forces spread out around the trading post's main entrance. By order of Fleet Commander Gex, you will surrender the individual responsible for the murder of War Master Krax. Compliance will result in swift execution. Resistance will result in prolonged suffering for all inhabitants. Tank activated the trading post's communication system, his voice carrying clearly across the settlement's external speakers. Captain Thrak, this is Staff Sergeant Rodriguez. Your boss picked a fight with a United States Marine and lost. If you're smart, you'll pack up your toys and head home before you join him. Thrak's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. You killed Krax through trickery and primitive weapons, human. We have adapted. Our armor has been reinforced, our weapons recalibrated. You cannot repeat your earlier deception. Through the security monitors, Tank could see the Corvan troops spreading out in a classic siege formation. They'd learned from their leader's mistake and weren't going to give him another clean shot. Professional soldiers, he had to admit. Dangerous ones, Dr. Yix, Tank called over his shoulder, never taking his eyes off the tactical displays. How long until that Corvan ship can provide orbital bombardment support? The draconian scales rippled with anxiety as he consulted his scanner. Their main weapons require 15 minutes to charge for surface bombardment. But Marine Rodriguez, surely you cannot stand against 40 veteran warriors? Tank's reflection in the darkened monitor screen showed a man completely at peace with impossible odds. His expression was calm, almost meditative, like someone preparing for routine duty rather than a suicide mission. Doc, he said quietly, you're about to learn something about humans that the rest of the galaxy hasn't figured out yet. We're not the peaceful little mammals everyone thinks we are. We're what happens when evolution decides that a planet needs the most persistent, creative, and ruthlessly efficient predators in the known universe. The first plasma bolts began striking the trading post's shields as Captain Thrak's forces opened fire. The trading post's energy shields flickered under the concentrated plasma fire, their blue glow strobing like a dying star. Tank watched the tactical displays with professional interest as Captain Thrak's forces methodically worked to overload the defensive systems. Textbook siege tactics executed with mechanical precision. Shields at 60% and falling, Dr. Yix reported, his clawed hands dancing across the monitoring equipment. At current rate of discharge, we have perhaps 8 minutes before complete failure. Tank nodded, his attention focused on the enemy formation displayed on the security monitors. The Corvans had spread into overlapping fire teams, each covering the other's advance positions. They'd also positioned snipers on the surrounding buildings, cutting off potential escape routes. Good tactical thinking, but they were still following their standard playbook. That's their first mistake, he murmured, activating the trading post's internal communication system. All civilians, this is Sergeant Rodriguez. I need everyone in the central shelter area within the next 2 minutes. Stay low, move fast, and don't worry about personal belongings. The alien inhabitants scattered like startled birds, gathering their young and essential supplies with practiced efficiency. Life on the frontier taught you to travel light and move quickly when trouble came calling. Tank turned his attention back to the defensive systems, his fingers working across controls he was still learning to interpret. The trading post's designers had never intended it to withstand military assault, but they'd built in some interesting features for dealing with pirates and raiders. Computer, can you display the settlement's utility tunnel network? He asked the trading post's AI system. A three-dimensional schematic appeared on the main display, showing a web of maintenance tunnels that connected every major building in the settlement. Most were too narrow for Corvan warriors in full armor, but perfectly sized for someone of human dimensions. Excellent, Tank muttered, studying the layout with the eye of someone trained in urban warfare. Dr. Yix, I need you to patch me into the automated defense turrets. Can you give me manual control? The draconian scientist's scales shifted to puzzled colors. The turrets are designed for automated operation, Marine Rodriguez. Manual control would be highly inefficient against multiple targets. Not if you know what you're doing, Tank replied, downloading the tunnel schematics to his personal datapad. Trust me, Doc. Humans have been fighting in cities since we figured out how to stack rocks on top of each other. Outside, Captain Thrax's assault forces had moved to within 50 meters of the main entrance. Their powered armor gleamed in the harsh light of Kepler 442b's twin suns as they prepared for the final push. Victory was inevitable. It was just a matter of how quickly the primitive mammals would surrender. Tank sealed the last of the civilians into the central shelter, their frightened faces pressed against the reinforced viewing ports. Children of a dozen species clung to their parents, while adults whispered prayers in languages that predated faster-than-light travel. This is taking too long, Captain Thrax's voice boomed across the settlement. Surrender now or we begin executing hostages. Counteroffer, Tank replied through the external speakers as he slipped into the maintenance tunnel system. How about you and me settle this marine to marine? Winner takes the settlement. Loser gets a nice view of the local soil composition. Thrax's mandibles clicked in genuine amusement. You would challenge a Corvan shock captain to single combat? Your species' arrogance rivals that of the ancient Praetorians. Tank's voice echoed from a different speaker array, indicating he was already moving through the tunnel system. Not arrogance, Captain, professionalism. See, Marines don't leave civilians in harm's way if there's another option. Even alien civilians we just met. The Corvan officer consulted his tactical displays, trying to track the humans' movement through the settlement's infrastructure. His sensors showed heat signatures in the tunnel network, but they were fragmented and difficult to follow. The primitive mammal was proving annoyingly elusive. Very well, human. I accept your challenge. Present yourself for honorable combat. Already here, Tank's voice said from directly behind Thrax's position. The Corvan captain spun around, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to track movement that would have been invisible to most species. Tank stood atop a maintenance shed 20 meters away, having emerged from a tunnel exit that shouldn't have been accessible from his last known position. Thrax's plasma rifle swung toward the human, but Tank was already moving, dropping behind cover as energy bolts scorched the air where he'd been standing. The Marine's return fire came from a different position entirely, his appropriated Corvan sidearm sending coherent energy pulses through gaps in the alien formation. Impossible, Thrax snarled, his tactical computer showing the human's position, updates faster than his forces could respond. No being moves that quickly through unfamiliar terrain. Tank's laughter echoed from the settlement's speaker system, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. Captain, you've been fighting farmers and merchants for so long, you've forgotten what real soldiers look like. A series of explosions rocked the Corvan formation as the trading post's automated turrets opened fire from unexpected angles. Instead of the standard overlapping fields that could be easily countered, they were firing in coordinated patterns that herded the alien warriors into predetermined kill zones. He's controlling the defensive systems manually, one of Thrax's lieutenants reported through their neural link. The targeting patterns are completely unpredictable. Thrax ducked behind a cargo container as plasma fire chewed through the air above his head. The human was using the settlement's own defenses like precision instruments, turning what should have been a simple siege into a three-dimensional maze of death. All units, converge on the central plaza, Thrax ordered, trying to regain control of the tactical situation. Overlapping fire patterns. Watch for tunnel exits. The Corvan warriors began moving in coordinated squads, their training allowing them to maintain formation even under the unorthodox assault. They were veterans of 100 campaigns, survivors of the Empire's most brutal conflicts. One primitive human couldn't possibly. The first squad never made it to the plaza. Tank emerged from a storm drain behind their position, moving with fluid precision that seemed to violate several laws of physics. His appropriated weapons spoke in controlled bursts, each shot finding gaps in armor that shouldn't have existed. By the time Thrak's forces realized what was happening, 3 of his squads were down and the human had vanished back into the tunnel system like smoke in a hurricane. "Status report," Thrak demanded through gritted mandibles. 12 casualties, sir. The human is using guerrilla tactics combined with intimate knowledge of the terrain. He's treating the entire settlement as a single integrated weapon system. Captain Thrak looked up at the Corvan battlecruiser orbiting overhead. Orbital bombardment was looking more attractive by the minute. Civilian casualties be damned. This single human was making the Empire's finest shock troops look like raw recruits. Fleet Commander Gex paced the bridge of his battlecruiser like a caged predator, his yellow eyes fixed on the tactical displays showing the chaos unfolding on the planet's surface. 28 of his finest shock troops were dead or wounded, and the rest were scattered across the trading post like prey animals fleeing a hunter. "Commander," his tactical officer reported, "Captain Thrak is requesting immediate orbital bombardment of the settlement. He claims a single human is decimating our ground forces." Gex's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "A single human? That's impossible. Humans are weak, soft-skinned mammals with primitive technology. Our intelligence reports indicate they avoid direct confrontation." On the main viewer, another Corvan life sign winked out as Tank struck from yet another unexpected angle. The human seemed to be everywhere at once, using the trading post's infrastructure like his personal weapon system. Every tunnel, every maintenance shaft, every defensive emplacement was being turned against the Empire's forces. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's the human." Gex's eyes narrowed to predatory slits. "Put it through." Tank's voice filled the bridge, calm and conversational despite the sounds of combat in the background. "Fleet Commander, this is Staff Sergeant Rodriguez. I believe we need to have a chat about your boy's behavior down here." "Human," Gex snarled, "you will surrender immediately or face the full might of the Corvan Empire. My ship can reduce that settlement to radioactive dust." "Yeah, I figured you might say that," Tank replied. "Problem is you've got civilians down here from 12 different species, including some draconian diplomats. Pretty sure the Galactic Council would take a dim view of you glassing a neutral trading post." Gex consulted his intelligence files. The human was correct. Several of the species represented in the settlement had mutual defense treaties that would complicate any orbital bombardment. Political considerations were annoyingly complex when dealing with lesser species. "What do you propose, human?" Tank's laughter carried a sharp edge that made several bridge officers unconsciously step backward. "Simple. You call off your ground troops, pack up your flying scrap heap, and leave this system. In return, I don't show the rest of the galaxy what happens when you pick a fight with a species that evolved from pack hunters." "Preposterous," Gex roared. "The Corvan Empire does not negotiate with prey animals. We are the apex predators of this galaxy. Are you?" Tank's voice dropped to a conversational whisper that somehow carried more menace than any shout. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like your apex predators are getting their asses kicked by one bored Marine with too much time on his hands." On the tactical display, another Corvan squad was being systematically eliminated as Tank herded them into a kill zone, using nothing but the trading post's fire suppression system and a few well-placed shots. The human's tactical awareness was unlike anything in the Corvan database. Captain Thrak's voice crackled through the communication system, strain evident despite the universal translator's limitations. "Fleet Commander, request immediate extraction. This human fights like no species we have encountered. He predicts our movements, anticipates our tactics, turns our own strengths against us." Gex studied the battlefield display with growing unease. His forces were being outfought by a single individual, using improvised weapons and civilian infrastructure. It was tactically impossible, yet it was happening in real time on his own screens. "Commander," the sensor officer reported, "long-range scanners are detecting multiple hyperspace signatures approaching this system." Configuration suggests human military vessels. Tank's voice returned to the communication channel, still maddeningly calm. That would be the USS Constellation and her battle group. Seems someone noticed that one of their Marines went missing and decided to investigate. Should be here in about 30 minutes. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Human military vessels were largely unknown quantities. But if a single human soldier could devastate Corvan shock troops, what could an entire fleet accomplish? "You're bluffing," Gex said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Check your long-range sensors, Commander. 12 heavy cruisers, 4 dreadnoughts, and a fleet carrier, plus about 50 smaller vessels for convoy escort. The United States Navy doesn't mess around when it comes to protecting Marines." Gex's tactical officer confirmed the sensor readings with visible nervousness. The approaching human fleet was massive, clearly designed for serious military operations rather than exploration or diplomacy. Worse, their technology was completely unknown, making threat assessment impossible. On the surface, Tank had gone quiet, but the Corvan casualties had stopped mounting. Either the human was out of ammunition, or he was waiting for something. Given his performance so far, Gex suspected the latter. "What are your terms?" the fleet commander asked reluctantly. "Simple. You leave now, take your wounded, and go home. Tell your empire that humans are under the protection of the United States military, and we take a very personal interest in anyone who threatens civilians under our watch." Gex's claws scraped against his command chair's armrests. Retreat was not in the Corvan vocabulary. The Empire had built its reputation on never backing down from inferior species, but the approaching human fleet changed the tactical situation considerably. "And if we refuse?" Tank's reply carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Then you get to explain to your superiors why the Corvan Empire's finest shock troops got wiped out by a single Marine with a bad attitude. Either way, you're leaving. The only question is whether you leave with your pride intact or as a cautionary tale." The fleet commander looked around his bridge at the nervous faces of his crew. They'd never seen their invincible forces defeated by a single enemy combatant. The psychological impact was already spreading through the ship's neural networks, creating doubt where there had once been absolute confidence. Below them, the trading post's civilians watched in amazement as Corvan dropships began launching from the surface, carrying their wounded comrades back to the orbiting vessel. The retreat was orderly but unmistakably final. Tank emerged from the tunnel system and walked calmly across the settlement's main plaza, his weapons lowered but ready. Behind him, the trading post's automated systems were already beginning damage assessment and repair protocols. "Fleet Commander," he said into his communicator. "Thanks for choosing the smart option. Oh, and one more thing." "What?" Gex snarled. Tank's smile was visible even through the communication link. "Welcome to the neighborhood. Try not to let the door hit you on the way out." 3 months after the incident at Kepler 442b, the story had spread throughout the galaxy like wildfire through dry grass. Every species, from the proud Altarians to the insectoid Zephyrite, knew about the human Marine who had single-handedly defeated an entire Corvan raiding force. The trading post had been rebuilt and expanded, now serving as an unofficial embassy for human-alien relations. Dr. Yix had been appointed as the station's chief science officer, while Kelvin had become the unofficial mayor of what locals were calling Rodriguez Station, despite Tank's protests about the name. Tank himself sat in his old corner table, nursing another glass of what the Altarians optimistically called ethanol. The taste hadn't improved, but the company was better. Delegates from dozens of species made regular pilgrimages to meet the human who had redefined galactic warfare in a single afternoon. "Sergeant Rodriguez," said Ambassador Vexhai of the Centauran Republic, her translator rendering her musical language into standard English. "My government wishes to formally request a military alliance with Earth. The Corvan Empire has been unusually quiet since your demonstration, but we fear they are planning retaliation." Tank sipped his drink and considered the request. 3 months of similar conversations had given him insight into galactic politics that most Marines never experienced. Every species wanted human protection, but few understood what they were really asking for. "Ambassador," he replied carefully, "with respect, you don't want a military alliance with humanity. You want us to be your attack dogs ready to sick on anyone who threatens you. That's not how we work." The ambassador's facial tendrils shifted to confused colors. "I do not understand." Surely humans would benefit from expanded territorial influence and access to our trade networks. See, that's where you're wrong, Tank explained, gesturing toward the viewport where human patrol ships could be seen making their regular security sweeps. We don't want your territory. We don't need your trade networks. What we want is for everyone to play nice and stop picking on civilians. Dr. Yix approached the table, his scales showing the deep blue of scientific curiosity. Marine Rodriguez, I have completed my analysis of human military doctrine based on your actions during the siege. The results are disturbing. Tank raised an eyebrow. Disturbing how? The draconian scientist activated a holographic display showing tactical diagrams and statistical analyses. Human warfare appears to be based on principles that no other species has developed. You treat every environment as a potential weapon system, every obstacle as a tactical advantage. Most concerning, you seem to view numerical disadvantage as a challenge rather than a deterrent. Sounds about right, Tank agreed. What's disturbing about that? Because it suggests that humans are not merely another spacefaring species, Dr. Yix replied, his voice heavy with implications. You are an entire civilization of apex predators who have learned to cooperate instead of compete. The potential military applications are... He trailed off, unwilling to complete the thought. Ambassador Vexhai leaned forward eagerly. This is precisely why the Centauran Republic seeks alliance with Earth. With human military support, we could finally challenge Corvan hegemony. Tank's expression hardened. And there's the problem. You want to use us as weapons against your enemies. But what happens when we're done fighting your wars? What happens when the only hammer in the galaxy belongs to a species that sees every problem as a nail? The question hung in the air like smoke from a chemical fire. The assembled aliens exchanged uncertain glances, suddenly seeing the implications of what they'd been requesting. Kelvin cleared his throat nervously. Surely humans would not abuse such power. Your actions here demonstrated remarkable restraint and protection of civilian populations. This time, Tank acknowledged. But what about next time? What happens when some human commander decides that the galaxy would be safer under Earth's direct control? What happens when we stop being protectors and start being conquerors? Dr. Yix's scales shifted to worried amber. You believe humans could become like the Corvans? Tank finished his drink and stood up, his movement drawing the attention of every being in the trading post. Doc, humans didn't claw our way to the top of Earth's food chain by being nice. We did it by being better at violence than anything else on the planet. The only thing keeping us peaceful is the choice to be peaceful. He walked toward the viewport, looking out at the stars where human ships patrolled alongside vessels from a dozen other species. The sight was peaceful, collaborative, everything the galaxy claimed to want. The Corvans rule through fear because that's all they know, Tank continued. But humans, we understand something they don't. Real power isn't the ability to destroy your enemies. Real power is the ability to destroy your enemies and choosing not to. Ambassador Vexhai's translator struggled with the complex emotional undertones in Tank's voice. Then you refuse our alliance request? Tank turned back to face the assembled aliens, his expression serious but not unkind. I'm saying you need to think very carefully about what you're asking for. Right now, humans are content to patrol our own space and help out when civilians are threatened. We're the friendly neighborhood cops who show up when bullies get out of line. He paused, making sure his words carried the weight he intended. But if you turn us into your personal army, if you make us responsible for galactic security, then we stop being cops and start being occupying forces. And trust me, you really don't want to find out what humans look like when we stop playing nice. The trading post fell silent, except for the hum of life support systems. Outside, a human patrol ship drifted past the viewport, its sleek hull bristling with weapons that no one had yet tested in serious combat. Dr. Yix was the first to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. What do you recommend, Marine Rodriguez? Tank smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Learn to fight your own battles. Accept human help when civilians are threatened, but don't expect us to win your wars for you. Because the day humanity starts conquering the galaxy is the day everyone else becomes our subjects, whether they want to be or not. He headed toward the exit, then paused at the threshold. And for what it's worth, I really hope that day never comes. The galaxy's a lot more interesting when everyone gets to make their own choices. As Tank disappeared into the station's corridors, the assembled aliens sat in contemplative silence. They had come seeking a weapon to use against their enemies. Instead, They had found something far more dangerous, a species that understood the true nature of power and chose to limit its own use. Outside, the stars continued their ancient dance, unaware that the balance of galactic civilization had shifted forever. The galaxy had finally learned fear, but not in the way anyone had expected. It wasn't the fear of human weapons or human aggression that kept alien commanders awake at night. It was the fear of what might happen if humanity ever stopped choosing to be the good guys. Because when apex predators decide to be civilized, everyone else had better hope they never change their minds.